Hey, my name's Andrew, and today we're talking about the Sigma 16mm lens. I've been using this lens for about 3 months, and ever since I got it, it pretty much hasn't left my camera. Before you click away, this isn't going to be a video of me just sitting in front of a camera talking to you about a lens. I'm going to actually be showing some sample footage here in a minute. But before I do that, I just wanted to say this is not a complete detailed review. There's already many on the specs of the camera, but this is going to be a review of my experience with the lens and just more practical daily use of the lens. Also, I'm going to be breaking up the video into 3 parts. The first part is actual sample footage. Part number 2 is going to be more a thorough breakdown of the lens itself. And part number 3 is going to be my pros and cons and basically my summary of the lens. So jumping into the first part, I'm going to be showing you some footage of the lens, and I've actually already been showing you some of the footage off this lens, and I'm using the Canon M50 to record this, and I'm using the Sigma 16mm lens. So as you can tell, in a studio setting, I think this looks really good. The background's pretty blurred and I'm in focus and everything looks pretty sharp. That's kind of the first place where I've been using this lens, and I've really enjoyed it in the studio setting since it does pretty good in low light. Here in a studio where I don't have a lot of natural light, it just looks really good. The second one is vlogging, and one of my concerns when I got this lens was since it doesn't have image stabilization, I was kind of concerned that it would be a little too shaky. But from my experience, it actually does really well when you're vlogging. The image stabilization is kind of important, but on this lens you don't really notice it since it is a wide angle. It's you just don't notice the shaking too much. The third place I've used this lens is kind of more up close B-roll and product videography, photography, and stuff like that. This lens does a really good job with really close on subjects. There's countless ways you can use this lens, but for me, pretty much in a studio setting is my most used that I've been using this lens for. Number 2, I've been using it for vlogging, and number 3 for like B-roll. If you're going to be using this lens for YouTube, I think this lens pretty much checks all those boxes that you'd be using it for. All right, so moving on, kind of the product breakdown. Just really quick, I just wanted to talk about the lens build quality. It does feel pretty heavy, and it's pretty big in comparison to other lenses you can get for like small mirrorless cameras. But my kind of take on it is I really like the size. The focus ring on it is really smooth and pretty satisfying to turn, actually. It's got so much room for gripping it. So that's kind of a quick product breakdown. Basically, my thought on it is it passes any kind of build quality test. It is great. So now on to the pros and cons. I've made a list here of what I think are some pros and some maybe cons of why you might not want to get it. So jumping right into that, pro number 1 is the image quality looks amazing, and you can be the judge of that. The images that I've shown you, if that's something that you think is good quality, then that's what you can get out of this lens. The M mount is pretty nice, and the fact that I don't have to mess around with adapters on my Canon M50. The price, I mean, it really depends on what you think is a good price, but honestly, this lens is about $400, and for comparable prices of other lenses out there, I think $400 is a really good price for the quality that you're able to get with this lens. The focus ring on this thing, like I said before, is really smooth and satisfying to use. And the build quality, as I've also said, is, I think, really solid. Some cons, and I'm going to have kind of some rebuttals too about these cons. But first one is the no image stabilization. If you're trying to get a really smooth shot, I mean, you can be using gimbals and stuff like that, but this lens itself doesn't have image stabilization built into it. And as I've said before, it really... From my testing, you can tell that it doesn't have image stabilization, but at the same time, my almost style, I kind of like a little bit of that organic shaking of the camera. If it's too smooth, it just seems fake to me. So it doesn't really bother me, but if it does, if that's something that you don't want in your videos, then this lens might not be the one for you. The second con I have is that it is kind of big. If you're trying to do a more portable rig, this is definitely going to be taking up more room than your like kit lens. My honest opinion about the size of this lens is that it kind of, and this might be silly, but it kind of makes me feel a little bit more professional because it doesn't look like a little kit lens. It actually looks like a bigger, more professional lens. The size doesn't really bother me. The fact that the lens is big enough that you can actually hold it for vlogging means I don't even need like a tripod half the time. So when I'm vlogging with this camera, I'm literally just using the camera and maybe a microphone if I feel like I need it, but I'm using the actual lens itself to hold the camera. So it kind of counts as a con that it's bigger, but for me, I almost use that as a pro because I like the size of it. And those are kind of the only two cons I have with this lens. I mean, it does everything you want it to. So if you're going to be using this for YouTube, kind of the way I have, I think it's a no-brainer. Get this lens. For the past 3 months, this lens has rarely left my camera. My only concern would be if you're not really going to be using the mirrorless line for a long time, it would be kind of silly to invest in an M mount lens that you're not going to be using forever. You can turn around and sell lenses. That is a good thing about lenses, though, is they hold their value. So for me, I wouldn't have too many concerns. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you give it a like, and I'm pretty quick with responding to questions. So if you have any questions, if I haven't covered something you are interested in, leave a comment down below. If you're interested in more videos like this, consider subscribing. And if you do, I will see you guys in the next video.